Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo and hello everybody, Mike here, and welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. Tonight is going to be kind of fun because I want to talk about something. I was brought this idea from my guest tonight, who you'll meet in a second, and it was a topic that I thought warranted some discussion, and because there is this common, I think, drive as all collectors to be what's next, what's the next thing, what are we looking for, what are we hunting for, and there's a lot of joy in that within the hobby. But I think it can obviously distract us from a lot of things around the hobby that can also be enjoyable if it's our singular focus. And so what I want to talk about tonight and give you guys some ideas or some things, talk through this topic and give you guys some things to think about ways to enjoy the hobby beyond just acquiring more items. And to do that, I'm going to bring on my guest tonight. It is Drew from A Vintage Legacy. Drew, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on tonight, Mike.
You betcha. I'm excited. When you came to me with this topic, I was very intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your story as much as you want to get into and how the hobby's been for you the last 18 months or so.
Okay. So, my story is very typical for a lot of collectors, especially in our age range. I collected as a kid, did the packs and all that kind of stuff, got caught up in the sort of the junk wax era, whatever, accumulating. And as I got older and things happened or whatever, my collection grew. I didn't really have a lot of downtime out of the hobby like a lot of people. And then when eBay came along, I suddenly discovered that I could afford vintage cards because I always looked in the Beckett's and, those things were thousands of dollars according to Beckett, and I couldn't do that. But, I started buying cards and doing this and that. Anyway, and for about a decade or so, a couple of decades, actually, I really accumulated quite a decent collection I was very happy with and had a great time doing it. But a few years ago, I had a personal situation, and I realized that my collection was so big that if really what it came down to is if something had happened to me, I realized that my collection would become a burden to my wife and my kids if I wasn't here. And I thought I didn't want to do that to them. So I started downsizing my collection. I started what I called uncollecting my collection, and I really just kept the things that I really enjoyed, the special cards to me, the special sets or players or whatever, and then that became what I ended up doing, and I thought, well, this is it. I'm not much of a card collector anymore. I wasn't adding anything. I was getting rid of things, and then without my knowing that it was going to happen, I started enjoying the hobby on a whole new level that I never thought I could do. And it had nothing to do with acquisition, but it had everything to do with enjoying what I have and being creative in what I already owned in order to enjoy this hobby on a different level. So that's kind of where I am now. And that's what I've been doing. And I add very, very few things to my collection, but I'm having the best time I've ever had in my entire collecting life.
So you told me in a text how many cards you added in 2023. Tell everybody how many cards you added in 2023.
Now this is cards that I actually sought out and purchased. So I had gifts from people and stuff like that, but actually where I sought it out and did it, I added a total of 3 cards in 2023. And that was it. So
yeah, most people listening to this would be like, well, what the heck, and they might even define you not as a collector. And completely disagree with that. I think, in fact, all the people that tell me that they took breaks for periods of their life for various reasons, growing up, chasing girls, buying cars, whatever, going to college, all these things, didn't have the money, etc. All of those doesn't make you not a collector. If you still have your cards, you still enjoy your cards, you from time to time look at your cards, you still have them, you're a collector. And you were uncollecting your collection, but you were still a collector because you still had cards, and so I like to think of just people, if you have cards, yes, you collect cards.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I realized was not just the cards that I collected over the years, it was the memories. And if anybody's ever watched my channel on YouTube, you know that I'm all about just telling the stories about my collecting experience. And that's what I collected that I'm enjoying the most, is just reliving all those stories. Whether it's people I've met, or how I attain stuff, or just silly things or fun things or whatever. So it's just all part of the experience besides just obtaining things.
Would you say a large contributor to your newfound enjoyment of the hobby beyond acquiring new things has been social media, whether it's YouTube or other platforms? Would you say that's true?
Yeah, definitely, because I've been on Net54 for quite a long time. In fact, the first time I ever heard or met you was that over a decade ago. I didn't know who you were, and you did a quick, it was your first room tour video, and I watched it, and I remember watching, I didn't know who you were. And years later, I found you on YouTube through other circumstances, and I'm like, I know that room somewhere. And I went back, and sure enough, it was you from way back. I commented on your post years and years ago, that I thought it was a cool thing that you did. But anyway, yeah. So being on Net54, I got to know people, but you only can know them to a certain extent. But here on YouTube, you get to see people, and listen to them, and it's been easier to get to know so many people, to where now, like so many other people, I've got this huge group of people that I really call friends, and I've only met one that I met on YouTube actually in person. So it's kind of fun to be able to connect with so many people from different backgrounds and all over the place, and just share that experience with them.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Net 54, not a place I frequent a lot anymore
Hmm.
because of what I do here on YouTube and podcasts and all that. I only have so much hobby time just like everybody else. But
Sure.
a decade ago, that was the place to go if you were a vintage guy, and it
Yeah.
still exists. It's still a great place. If I hardly ever talk about it on this show, but Net 54, if you've never heard of it, is a forum, basically an online forum with a myriad of topics. If you want to learn something about vintage cards, or there's a set you want to know more about, that's the place to go, because there are my son-in-law is calling me. Hang on. Um, there's so much knowledge there, and but it's exciting that you've kind of migrated, because forums, you can only learn about people so much, right? At the end of the day, I even went to some of the Net 54 dinners at the National, and you know it was great and all. You have to, what's your username, and I don't, there's so many people, it's hard to get to know anyone really well.
Hmm.
uh, there's other mediums that I think lend themselves better to developing good friendships, and people you can really have common ground with and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
still a great place to learn, a great place to see things. And blowout forums is obviously another one. Those are the two big ones, I would say.
Hmm.
So yeah, those have been, boy, you made me reach back into the mental archives there for sure,
Yeah.
thinking about that. Yeah, great time, good times. I remember posting that video and like, nobody's gonna watch this.
Yeah. It was funny because, not to get off topic, but I remember watching it. And I'm like, I can't believe someone's actually putting their collection on YouTube. Like, YouTube was just, it wasn't like, I don't know, it just had a different aura back then. And you were the first person I ever saw anything with cards, and for a long, long time. So yeah, but that's just part of the connection, and that's how I got to where I am. And yes, to answer your question, a lot of my enjoyment is because I'm doing YouTube, but not because I'm creating stuff. you can still get to know people even if you're not creating people through comments and other ways as well.
Yeah, for sure. Um, the greatest thing was YouTube used to have direct messaging as
Mhm.
part of the app, so you could actually, if you saw somebody that you really connected with on a collecting level, you could, hey, reach out and, hey, I love your stuff or whatever. I used to do that all the time in the beginning because I didn't know anyone either, and have built a great network of friends similar to you. And I would say that is my favorite part of enjoying the hobby, period. More than the cards, even more than the cards,
Definitely.
which, which is not why any of us ever got on it. We got on there because we liked cards, and we found out, hey, I like these people more, you
Mhm.
know, and that's been so much fun. And now we have this again, this we can speak this common language of that no one else can speak if you start talking to a non-card person and use acronyms and describe things that most people would, their eyes would glaze over and they wouldn't understand. So it's a unique bond that card collectors have and a unique community that we have here. People listen to this podcast, that watch the show on YouTube, whatever. They reach out to me all the time and just say how much it means to them to, connect with other people, like hear other people. Nobody wants to hear me talk for an hour. But as we go through more of not collecting or not acquiring, I almost contradicted myself there, of not acquiring, other ways you found to pass your hobby time, so to speak, that have been
Mhm.
enjoyable for you. What would you say?
Okay. Well, a couple of things that you can do. I don't I haven't I have done these all of these to some level, but things that I'm also bringing experience from talking to other people, just a suggestion. So the first one is you can organize what you already have. You've got the beast. There's I know you do. I know Jake Legends Never Die. Real big into spreadsheets and getting it all in paper or getting it on computers. Just go back to like when you were a kid and you're putting them in binders or putting them in order. But it just organize your collection. Pull it out every once in a while. If you've got cards and binders or if you've got slabs and boxes, pull them out and organize them in some way. And you start to remember the cards. You remember why you got what you did. And a lot of times that leads to rediscovery of things you forgot you had. Not everybody, you can't remember every single thing you've ever gotten. So that would be one, is just organize, not because you have to, like as a little kid, go clean your room. It's more like you get to do this, and you get to um, touch the cards again and see them and look at them and read the backs, and you kind of get lost and go down rabbit trails. But you already have those cards in your home or wherever you are. So that's one of them, is just organize what you have and reorganize it. It's just kind of like playing with cards, so to speak. Um, Another one is that I've done, and this is when, if you're in a place where finances are an issue and you just don't have the budget. We kind of all experienced this boom over the last few years, and I've heard over and over and over, "Well, I just can't afford those cards. I can't afford that anymore," or whatever. It's outpriced me. Reuse your collection to reacquire some or to acquire something you've never had. And I'll give you a great example. Years ago, I was a Hall of Fame type collector. I was trying to get one Hall of Fame player or card from every player. And a lot of guys do that. And I was trying to get as many different sets as possible. And of course, once you get into pre war, you get into some real big cards. No matter when you bought them, they were expensive. And there was a certain card that I had no budget left, and it was going to be tough. I knew it was going to be expensive for what I was at, and so what I started doing was I challenged myself. I wanted to see if I could go in my sort of dime box and take as many cards as possible and try to sell and flip and move stuff that I had forever that wasn't really valuable, and see if I can nickel and dime my way up to this card. And I did. So I'm talking like 50. I remember a 50-cent Kirby Puckett card or whatever. You're selling this stuff, and you're kind of, and you just kind of, you start to grow this pile. It's kind of like when you empty the change out, from your, on your dresser or whatever. And I was like, oh man, I had $5. I didn't know it. And anyway, so I'm going to show you the card that I got, and I'll tell you what it is for the thing. But I actually acquired from my dime box over the years a 1913 National Game Ty Cobb, and I bought this card with nothing more than what was already in my collection. And it's not a high grade, but it is a Ty Cobb. It was when he played, and it'll always be my Ty Cobb. So that's just it. It's sort of like use what you have to get something you really, really want. And it's not that's not for everybody, but it is a lot of fun if you have that mindset to be able to do that.
And I totally respect that. It's a great story. I immediately, and probably a lot of people feel the same way. I immediately started thinking, well, what could I get rid of and trade up, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I had Mike Junkweich's Hero over last week, and he was looking around. He's like, how do you ever look at all this stuff? And the answer is I don't. It's impossible. The volume of stuff that I have is quite literally impossible. And so my challenge to myself has been, okay, look, I have X thousands of Hall of Fame autographs. I don't need that many. I don't need 59 Brooks Robinsons or whatever. Could I take some of those? And the gold card I would be trying to get is a DeLong Lou Gehrig. Okay, so an $8,000 to $10,000 card, which to pay the cash for that is daunting. And so I think, well, how else could I do it? And it would be to sell all these. I have a lot of $20 bills and $50 bills in these Hall of Fame autographs, that I wouldn't even probably have to sell as many as I think I would to get to that point. I would clear a lot of space. And I think to myself, would I miss the card? Right. And if I started doing that, and the answer is probably not, because I don't even look at it now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I'm having to be very honest with myself about my collection and what truly do I enjoy, what truly makes me happy. Would I rather have these 2,000 extra Hall of Fame autographs, or would I rather have a DeLong Gehrig, right?
Yeah.
As just one example, right? You could do that in a whole lot of ways, and it makes a whole lot of sense. My hurdle, the mental hurdle of doing that is, once you go down it, I don't want to half-ass it. So it's either I do it all the way,
Yeah.
or don't do it at all. And it's finding time, listing stuff, can take it takes time.
Oh, sure. It's work, no doubt.
And for me personally, having to deal with the taxes and everything and selling and getting to a threshold where I would have to start reporting all of this just sounds nightmarish to me. And so do I do it at shows, where cash is king kind of thing? I enjoy going to shows. I've been a dealer already once recently at a Dallas show. Not the funnest experience. I had a good time, but I'd much rather not be obligated to sit and try to negotiate and, yada, yada. So it feels to me, my hurdle is me. It's my own. I'm kind of having a therapy session with you right now about my collection, in that, why do I need all this stuff? And at what point do I start doing what you did a while back to uncollect, so to speak, in a way?
Well, and that's the thing is, if you choose to go down that road, and that road is not for everybody. That was for me at that time. And I may not do that now, but if you choose to go down that road, it is a lot of work, but it's like anything else. You're setting a goal, and I will obtain this goal, but I have to do all these steps. So like what you were referring to in our little counseling session is, you need to look at that and say, is this a reason I'm not doing it, or is it an excuse I'm not doing it?
Oh,
And
totally an excuse.
then if it's an excuse, then, either turn it into a reason or get over yourself. And I don't mean to be rude, but at this
No,
stage, this is everybody. But it is a lot of work, and it's not for everybody. But the way in fact, I was talking to a friend of mine in the hobby, and he's got a card. I just can't ever save that much, and this and that. And I said, if you sat down at a table, like if you sat down at a table and you had your pile of Hall of Fame autographs of Fergie Jenkins and Jim Palmer's or whoever you've got, your $20 and $50 bills, and someone's got a 33 to long across the table from you, and they say, look, I will give you this pile for this, you would snatch it up in a second. The only difference is you have to go through one at a time or a lot at a time to get through that big pile. That's the work, but the sweat equity makes it that much more fun. And then you've got that story that I referred to earlier. Then every time you show off your DeLong, you're like, and I got this DeLong Gehrig because I sold, all these Hall of Fame autographs that I don't even miss. And it becomes that much more deep. It becomes that much more rooted in your collection of why it's so special. Because if we can just write a check for any card, it's just another card. It's just got a higher price tag. But if you put the sweat equity in, it makes it that much more valuable to you internally.
Yeah, I get it. It's a lot easier to buy cards with found money than earned money, right? If someone gave you $100 and said, go buy a card, you might not buy the card. You might just buy some, well, I wouldn't have bought this, but I've got this $100. I might as well buy that with that versus, man, I worked for this $100, whether it's at your job or selling cards or whatever, to earn that $100. You're going to be more cognizant and careful about how you spend it, right? Not
Exactly.
so just wishy-washy about it, so to speak. You said something earlier that I really resonate with, and that's the arrangement of your cards, like going through and kind of, either putting sets into a binder or just going through boxes. I've done that in the past. I've had periods, and I enjoy that thoroughly. Organizing my collection, reorganizing my collection. Well, maybe I'll rearrange this case this way, and I'll put these out, and that eats up an evening of hobby time, right? And I'm not sitting on eBay just looking for the next thing to buy.
Exactly.
I'm enjoying my collection, and I'm putting it in a different way for me to look at the next day and days forward, going forward. That's enjoyment for me, no doubt. I have found I'll get in the closet and I'll pull out a box and I want to see what's in here, And one time I found a 2011 Trout Update rookie, and like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. Kind of neat that I found that. With a bunch of other I had a Rizzo and whoever else is in 2011 Topps Update, and I was like, holy crud, I don't remember buying these cards.
Exactly.
I must have bought blaster boxes or whatever back in the day, and enjoyed seeing what inserts were there. And oh, these are cool. And they're cards I look at very seldom. And the biggest thing for me is the sets, right? Because I have all these sets and boxes going from now back to 73. They're all in boxes, right? And I have my older vintage sets that I've been doing in binders, but I haven't pulled out a box and converted it from box set to binder set because I'm like, it's a lot of work. All excuses, by the way. I'm acknowledging that. But because I know once it goes in, and it is a space issue. That's a real thing. That's a reason, not an excuse. It's like, where do I put? I want to do that for all my sets because I want to be able to go through them from time to time and look through them and enjoy all the cards instead of what good are they doing sitting in a box, right? In terms of my enjoyment of them. So, and this is very cathartic for me. I'm kind of enjoying this discussion. I'm trying to think of other ways I enjoy. Obviously, another way that I enjoy the hobby is by reading articles or watching other YouTube videos, because beyond me getting a card that I've been looking for a while, watching someone that I know and have invested time into their YouTube or know them as a friend, watching them acquire a card that they've been after for a while is incredibly satisfying. It's surprising how happy I can be for someone else to get a card, even if it's one that I would like. I would love that card, but man, it's so cool to see, Johnny get the card that he's been looking for 5 years. I love that. So that could eat up a whole evening of hobby time if I just spent it watching YouTube and catching up on people's videos. So, go ahead. Other thoughts, Drew, right now?
Yeah, so that kind of leads into another one is when you start really getting into this hobby on a different, not necessarily deeper, but maybe deeper level, and you start meeting people and making connections, they start to become more than just a fellow collector, and they start to become a fellow friend. And then you can share that experience. Now, you already mentioned, you get to see somebody, get a card they're looking for. And you and I both know that it doesn't matter what that card is. It could be like, for instance, I watched a video this morning of a guy that I know on YouTube. He's got a small channel. He has a good collection, but he's very happy. And what he acquired was probably a $5 card, but hearing the joy in his voice as he described finally getting this thing and he couldn't believe it, I was so happy for him. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter the value. I don't, you and I are not deep friends from long past, but still, when you finally get this along because you've talked about it, on your channels and stuff, I'm going to be excited for you. You know what I mean? But just the same as I was excited for this other guy today when he got this card that he couldn't believe he finally had. So that's the thing, is when you make that connection with people, then you can start to share in their experience. And that's another way to really enjoy this. And then you can start again, kind of like a kid. You make up games. You and Chris from Missouri, are doing this whole challenge thing. I mean, that's just honestly two grown kids playing with their baseball cards, and you're filming it. And and it's all in fun. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but you've got to knock down his ego a little bit. It's just all jest and it's all fun, but it doesn't really matter in the long run. So making that connection with people, and then being able to um, share in their joy, and have fun with their collection as well. Be able to talk about it, and what did they get, and how did they do, and what were their experiences. All that just helps drive the depths of this community being so much more fun than just getting cardboard.
Totally. Uh, I better set this up. A friend of mine, Chris from Missouri, and I, over on my Baseball Collector YouTube channel, have been doing a series over the last 6 weeks or so, I don't know how many weeks now, but where we will hit a randomizer and spin a wheel and pick a player, and we'll each show all the cards we have of that player. So we're in effect enjoying what we have, right? It gives us opportunities to pull out cards I haven't looked at in a long time potentially, and putting them all together. I love doing tabletop showcases where I get to go pull all the cards of a player from a certain year and lay them out on the table and get to see them all the way that I think God meant for us to see our cards, which is laid out where we can actually see them and not tucked away in a dark hole. And so Chris and I play a game where we get points based on the grade and do we have it or not. And it's just this friendly competition that has been so much fun, and it's with stuff we already have. That's
Exactly.
the best thing, is
Sure.
not buying new stuff. I did it one time, actually. I bought a Seaver card, but it was more to make a point and to have fun with it. And it was a cheap card, but we have had so much fun. He and I are both talking, like we talk privately all the time, and it's like, dude, this is the most fun. I can't wait till the next episode. I'm
Yeah.
looking for that. I pulled the cards already for Reggie Jackson, who's the next player we're going to be doing, and I'm going to beat him. But yeah, there you can connect with people, and then in different ways, trading, right? Trading with your friends. That's something where you can take cards maybe that you don't necessarily have an affinity for anymore, and turn that into something that you would enjoy. I have friends that literally their PC, which to me, PC is kind of a permanent designation. Like if it's in the PC, it's untouchable.
Sure.
And my definition is, I think, very narrow-minded compared to my friends who think, yeah, it's in my PC until I decide to sell it. Well, wait a second. Then it's not PC, right? But they say, no, I'm going to enjoy it while I have it. And if I find something different that I want to add and I can use that to acquire that, and I've had kind of my fill of it, so to speak, then all the better, And there's some wisdom there when they say that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Totally get it. So going forward, if you think about, okay, I'm in this low acquisition period, right? Is that something that you're enjoying so much that you plan on continuing? Do you have are you going to maybe expand your collecting purchases beyond 3 in 2024?
Well, so I don't probably, but I don't have a goal of like, well, I'm going to go all the way to 4. You know what I mean?
Right.
But in doing this, my collecting budget is not zero. I'm just not spending it. And I don't, because, I really came to a point to where cards that I want have been around for 50, 60, 70, whatever years. If it's another year, it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? And so I'm really not like, I got to have it now. Like, I've kind of gotten over a lot of that. There have been a few things that I really was sort of hot and heavy on the search for, but I've acquired a few of those and now I'm okay. So I'll give you an example. This year I do have for me, it's a big card that I want to get. And I'm hoping that at least by the end of the national, I will own it. However, if I come across it before the national, I'm okay to get it. When I go to the national, which I'm going this year, it's the first time I've ever been, and I'm looking forward to it. If I come back with zero new cards, I'm still okay. I don't care if I pick anything up, but if I get that one card, I mean, how much cooler is that? So that's kind of where I am as far as that goes. Other cards, I don't know. I've got money that's sort of saved up for whatever, but if I don't get it, it's okay because I don't have any current want list. Like I'm not building a set. I finished a 53 Bowman color set about 2 years ago, and when I was done with that, I thought, you know what? I think I'm done set collecting. I'm okay. I don't want to go through another set. I have 4 vintage sets. They all have a very special reason and meaning for me, and they're all complete, and I'm happy with them. Well, 5 because I have the Red Heart set. Um, and
Great
uh,
stuff.
but I'm okay with what I have. I really am. Because I can pull out. I don't have, and I'm not putting down people that have this kind of a collection. I don't have thousands or tens of thousands of cards. I can pull out a couple of the ones I have and just re-enjoy them and rediscovery. And so another thing I like to do is I like to, just like as a kid, you pull out some cards and you try to find something that you never noticed on a card before. And you can spend hours doing this. You can research it and find stuff. You can hear people on YouTube or wherever, and they'll say like, "Hey, did you know that such and such a card is whatever?" In fact, I heard something from you a while ago that I never knew. That I think you said it was what Mickey Mantle's last appearance on a Topps card was a team card or something.
71 tops. Yeah.
71 Topps team card. I didn't know that, so I went and found because I have the 71 set. That's the year I was born. So I went and found it, and sure enough, there he was. To another point of that, I'm going to make a correction because this is the biggest platform I've had the opportunity to do this on. But Stan Musial's first appearance on a top card is not 1958. He was actually on 1956's team card. So there you go. But, it's one of those things that now it's a blurry little photo. You can't see him, but still his name is. But it's stuff like that. So I'll give you a story if you indulge me. But I'm going to show you a card, and we can tell the people what it is. But I bet you're going to know the card, and you're going to know why I'm showing you this card. Now this is out of my set, and I've got a beater set. But go ahead and tell people what that card is.
It's the 71 tops Mets Bud Harrelson.
Bud Harrelson. Now, why do people like that card outside if they're a big Bud Harrelson fan?
Well, I think that's Nolan Ryan on the mound.
It is Nolan Ryan on the mound. And everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people know that. So it's a common player that's got a Hall of Famer in the foreground. And that's really cool to see that. What I wanted to do was, as I looked at this, and I've known that for years and years and years, I thought, well, who else is on this card? So I started really looking at this card, and I did a lot of investigation. I'm going to show the card a little closer, but you can see Bud Harrelson is applying a tag to someone sliding into second base. I wanted to find out who that player on second base is or sliding into second base. So I did a lot of investigating. I went back and took a game, not footage, but game records of when this picture had to be taken. I looked at the color of the uniform. I looked at anything distinguishing. And what I found out, I'm pretty sure, is that photo was taken immediately after this at bat. Now, that is the same set, but that's actually Joe Morgan at bat. And sliding into second base is Joe Morgan. So a lot of people know that Bud Harrelson has a Hall of Famer. He actually has 2 Hall of Famers on his card from 1971. When I discovered that was like, it was like when you get your DeLong. I was so excited to find that out because it took hours to research and go back through Baseball Reference and all this stuff. And you can do that with cards where you find interesting things, whether it's in the pictures or in the details or in the bios on the back, and things you never knew or you've forgotten about. That's just super cool to me. And that's just a way to enjoy your cards, is just enjoy what you have by studying it more than just saying, well, I have a whatever the card is, a 71 Bud Harrelson. Um, so that kind of stuff is super cool to me, and I love doing that. Um,
That's a great story and a great lesson for all of us to maybe just dive deeper into the stuff, like you said, like we already have, and go, wow, that's cool. Everybody knows the 56 Topps Hank Aaron is actually Willie Mays sliding on the inset picture stuff. The 57 Topps Aaron is reverse negative. There's some common things that are baseball card lore, but I didn't know about the Bud Harrelson card. That's pretty cool.
Well, here's another one as an example. I saw this on a video, pointed out, but this is a 1956 Topps Eddie Matthews, but he's rolling into second base. Well, that's Pee Wee Reese on the ground, and I'm a huge Pee Wee Reese collector. But you could see it clearly. You can see Dodgers on his uniform. 1956 is absolutely the best set to find hidden Hall of Famers, because in the action shots, there's so many plays that were at home or first, and you can see a lot of players. Like I've got Jimmy Pearsall, same set, and you can see very clearly that's Yogi Berra that is on the ground. And Berra and Campanella appear in more cards than anybody else that set, because there's so many plays at home, and of course a lot of those were taken in New York. So again, it's just flipping through what you have and finding stuff. And Jimmy Pearsall's, he's a semi-star maybe, but he's not a Hall of Famer. So if you don't have an Eddie Matthews, look at Pearsall or whoever. But you're right. There's the things that we know in baseball card lore, and then there's things that are still yet to be discovered that you may not have known. So
very, very cool. Trying to think of other ways that I enjoy my collection beyond the cards themselves, acquiring new cards. And there's a lot to be said for learning about the players. Whenever I have a kid that comes over, I will usually give them multiple cards, usually of players long dead before they were even born. These are younger kids, and I say, hey, I'm going to give you this card, but I want you to go read about this player because he was significant for this reason or that reason, and I want you to go learn more about that. I don't think especially in today's world, it's about owning the card and not why is that player historically significant in any way. And I loved that as a kid, and I need to rediscover that more and read more biographies and read more Baseball Reference pages and go look at, oh my gosh, this person was amazing, and look at this. I need to, that's kind of a, telling myself I need to be even better about that, because there's a lot of joy in that, in really knowing the story.
Yeah, you can easily randomly pick, say, 5 cards from your collection of common players, and then spend a night researching those 5 people, and just challenge yourself to find what was different or exciting, a story about that guy. The thing is it's not all in, well, it is in books, but it's so easy on the internet now. You just sit down and you can look and find stuff. And one of the things that I've heard and I've said is, these guys that made the major leagues, they were absolutely the best player in their high school. You know what I mean? And even if they're a common and they only had a cup of coffee and they only played for a half a season and they didn't do well or had a negative WAR or whatever, at one point in time, they were the best player in whatever league they were at. So they have a story to be discovered or rediscovered. So spend some time going in through and looking. And then when you see that card, it's like, man, this is really, really cool that this card has got this, like, whatever about it. Another one, as an example, is, and I don't have the card in front of me, but in 1953, I know it's card number 69, Dick Brodowski, who was he pitched for, I think, 4 or 5 years, Boston Red Sox. Well, what's cool about that card, 1953 Topps, is in the background, you see Fenway Park, and it's actually lit up. And I think it's the first card that depicts a night game. And that's kind of cool. He's a common, but you can pick that card up for a couple of bucks in decent condition, and you've got the first card that depicts a night game that we're so used to nowadays. But for half of baseball's history, from where we are now, they didn't play at night,
Right.
and that's kind of cool to me. That's really kind of neat. So whether you like Dick Bradowski or not, his card is kind of cool, and you'll never look at that card the same again if you don't notice it.
I've gone down the Wikipedia rabbit hole so many times where I'll pull up a player. Usually when I'm going to do a showcase on their cards or whatever, to during the showcase, give some little tidbits about, if I show a 67 tops, I want to talk Carl Yastrzemski. I want to talk about, that team, and this is the year he won the MVP or whatever. I want to know all these things, because as much as I wish I remembered everything, it's impossible. So I refresh myself, and then I find myself in the Wikipedia rabbit hole, and it makes me then go, oh, well, let me go look at this up and that up. And I mean, yeah, those things are fun to do. And then it takes my mind completely off acquiring new cards. I have
Exactly.
very little interest in doing that at that moment. But I will have moments where, in baseball, the Ken Burns thing does this to me a lot, where I will listen to a story that I've heard a dozen times, as many times as I've watched it, but it sinks in at a different level. And then I go look for that person's cards. I'm like, oh, I don't have a, Fred Merkle card. I need to go look for a Fred Merkle. I still don't have a Fred Merkle, but every time I read anything or watch anything about Merkle's boner, I want to go and get a Fred Merkle card just for giggles, because it connects me to that story. And I still don't have one, but there's lots of things, like it can go both directions, right? In a good way, because then there's actually a reason to buy the card than just to have one.
Exactly.
Just you have it, right? It's, man, I love this documentary and this and that. Awesome. So I hope you guys have learned. Any other final thoughts? I was going to finish up here for us, if you got anything else.
No, not really. I mean, the other thing is, remember, it's a hobby. You know what I mean? And I've heard you say it 100 times. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And a hobby is meant to be enjoyed. So enjoy the hobby. Buying cards and acquiring cards is definitely a fun thing. The thrill of the hunt and the chase, but that's not the only thing. And there's so many other ways to enjoy what you have. Um, and so just try to, maybe it's a little effort to put into figure out how to do that. But once you get rolling on that, and those become part or different, say, branches of how you collect, it just becomes a more full experience as a hobby. Get to know more people, or get to know the people better. Talk about stuff. Share your collection with people. Have them share with you. All that stuff is it's just made the whole hobby experience, like I said, a much more full experience. And but anyway, that's kind of where my thoughts are on it. So I appreciate you.
I love it, Drew. I really appreciate you being my counselor tonight. What are you, 150 an hour, 200 an hour? I got to decide how much to pay you for this session, but I really do appreciate your time and coming on the show. And it was a great idea for an episode, and I'm so glad to do it. So yeah, that's it for today, guys. Really, if you got something out of this, leave a comment. Would love to hear what you guys think if you're on YouTube. And if you're on podcast, you can message me on Instagram at Baseball Collector Mike. Would love to hear from you, your thoughts about this episode. Thanks, everybody, so much. Go check out Drew's channel. The Drew, A Vintage Legacy is his channel name. Check him out. You'll enjoy. You'll hear some great stories about cards. Talk to you guys later. Keep collecting.